Have you ever just stopped and wondered what the world would look like if we weren't here? It's a pretty wild thought experiment, and today we're going to explore what really happens when humanity steps aside and nature, well, nature takes the wheel.
Okay, so let's just dive right into the deep end with this question. It's the whole idea behind Alan Weisman's book, The World Without Us. I mean, think about it. A world suddenly, completely without people. What happens to our cities, our homes, our whole legacy?
But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just some hypothetical game. All around the world, from nuclear disaster zones to forgotten boom towns, there are places that are already empty. They give us a real-world peek into this post-human future, and what they show us is pretty mind-blowing.
What all these abandoned places have in common is this powerful, unstoppable process, nature's reclamation. It's the story of what happens when the constant human effort to hold back the wild world just stops. And as we're about to see, nature doesn't just politely knock on the door, it kicks it down.
You know, there's actually a scientific term for this, passive rewilding. It's a fascinating idea, right? Instead of us actively planting trees or reintroducing animals, we just stop. No more mowing, no repairs, no maintenance at all. We just step away and nature gets to take over, filling that vacuum we left behind with incredible speed and creativity.
I absolutely love this term from sci-fi author Bruce Sterling, involuntary parks. It just perfectly captures the strange, accidental beauty of these places. They become these amazing wilderness areas, not because we planned them that way, but simply because we left. So let's get into some of the most dramatic examples of this in action. We'll start with places that were emptied out almost overnight by sudden, shocking catastrophes.
This is Pripyat. It was a thriving, modern city built for the workers of the Chernobyl nuclear plant. After the disaster in 1986, nearly 50,000 residents were evacuated in just a matter of hours. They left everything behind. It literally became a ghost town in an afternoon.
But fast forward a few decades, and something astonishing has happened. The Chernobyl exclusion zone, despite the radiation, has transformed into something that, well, nobody could have predicted.
It's become this unique, thriving nature reserve. We're talking wild boars, wolves, lynxes, even brown bears roaming the empty streets of Pripyat. Over 200 species of birds have been spotted there, and a herd of endangered Przalowski's horses, which were reintroduced to the area, is now flourishing. It's just incredible.
Now, not all disasters are sudden. Take Centralia, Pennsylvania. This was a bustling mining town that's been slowly, and I mean slowly, choked out by a massive underground coal fire that started way back in 1962, and it is still burning today. And get this really puts the scale of the disaster into perspective. Geologists figure that fire could keep on burning for another 250 years. On the surface, streets have cracked wide open, smoke literally seeps from the ground, and nature has just steadily taken over the few buildings that are left.
But you know, it isn't always a huge catastrophe that empties a place out. Sometimes it's just plain old economics. So let's look at what happens when a town's good fortune just fades away. Welcome to Hashima Island in Japan. You might know it by its nickname, Gunkanjima, which means Battleship Island. From the late 1800s, this place was a massive subsea coal mining operation owned by Mitsubishi, and it was a huge symbol of Japan's industrial power.
To really understand Hashima, you have to try and wrap your head around just how incredibly crowded it was. At its absolute peak in the 1950s, more than 5,200 people were crammed onto this tiny rock. That made it one of the most densely populated places in all of human history. Every single square inch was built up to support that mine.
But the story of this island is, well, it's complicated. It was a beacon of industrial progress, for sure. But it was also a place of terrible suffering, where forced laborers from China and Korea were worked to death during World War II. Then, when the world switched from coal to oil in the 70s, Mitsubishi just closed the mine. By 1974, the island was completely empty.
You can find another story of faded fortunes over in Namibia. Kolmanskop was a boomtown built on diamonds in the early 1900s. But when the diamonds ran out, so did the people. The town was just left to the mercy of the Namib Desert, which has been steadily swallowing the buildings whole, filling entire rooms with sand. All right, so these real-world examples give us some pretty powerful clues. But what happens if we scale this all the way up? What would happen to an entire modern metropolis, a place like New York City?
And in the end, what parts of our civilization would actually stick around the longest?
The world without us paints this startling picture of a city like New York just left to its own devices, and the unraveling would happen shockingly fast. Without those pumps running 24/7, the entire subway system would be completely flooded in just 2 days. Within a couple of decades, the steel supports holding up the streets would rust through and start to fail. And in just 500 years, those leafy suburbs we know, they'd be completely gone, indistinguishable from the surrounding forest.
So, what would actually survive us? The legacy we leave behind is a pretty strange one. Our radioactive materials, our billions of tons of plastic, bronze statues, and these massive stone carvings like Mount Rushmore. Oh, and floating out there in the silence of space, the Voyager Golden Record, carrying our story long after Earth has forgotten us.
And, it all leads to this one final question. When the forests have finally grown over our cities, and the desert has swallowed our homes, what will our ruins say about us? What story will we have left behind for the universe to maybe one day find